No, I definitely agree, and maybe we can talk about this. This is the next subject, which is big and small. And I think this is a very big challenge for us working with the corporate, because even for us, it's not that simple to convince the corporate, this group inside the corporate, or it should be, but it never is, that the startup that we're bringing to the table is the right one, and they need to use it. And of course, I know, at least in my place, I know that I have teams, the CEO of AOL, Tim Armstrong, involvement, and I know that he will direct the people in order to do so. But I also know that even if he directs, I need to find the right way inside and to create the mechanism inside the organization to hug, sort of speak, the startups, and I'm putting it in place, and I want to hear what are your thoughts around it. You started with it already.
So I work with startups all over the world, so I'll try and be more specific to my experiences here in Israel. I agree 100% about doing the homework and having realistic expectations and being very, very specific. I will say that the biggest advantage in Israel is chutzpah, and the biggest disappointment I have is uninformed chutzpah. People come in, they think they've solved the world, and they're the only ones working on this problem, and they're the only ones who have figured it out. And that is catastrophic failure. It doesn't allow any room to progress in any productive manner. So I think one big advice here, which I think it's great how people take on, problems that nobody thinks are easy, comes up with innovative solutions. You have to be very careful when you're presenting it about what you do know and what you don't know, and do your homework both about the company you're trying to approach and about other people working on the same problem. When I ask a question, because I happen to know somebody who's working on something similar, and they at best are aware but don't know the difference, at worst don't even know, it's a very bad sign. The other thing I would advise is that Israelis tend to be a little bit impatient. So there is a certain process that you have to go through in a big corporation to build sponsorship, with I think what you were referring to. And that requires time. It requires an understanding about how to build the motivations on the part of the operating units to actually go through the headache, because for them often it's a headache. I'm very busy doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that you come in from left field with some other experiment. And sometimes that requires some preliminary stages. And so you build up a business case or a technical case or a proof point together, and that takes a little bit more time than people generally are willing to put into it. If you come in with that expectation in mind, things actually can move relatively quickly. But I think here people tend to be a little bit more impatient. So my two biggest advices would be to avoid uninformed chutzpah and have a little patience if you're going to start working with a big company.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add. They're really good points. I would say don't expect the big company to start using your product just because you're working with them. That's kind of one of the big, especially in the accelerators, it's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is, someone comes into Wyra or one of our accelerators and starts working with inside that program, and they expect that Telefonica is going to adopt that technology across its footprint instantly. It doesn't happen that way, and as Telefonica, I can tell you, 25 countries, every country is its own business, and it takes a lot of time. I was joking last night that Telefonica is more of a political organization, or kind of a country, than a business. It just happens to be public. So it's a challenge, big and small. I would say again, if you know the business and you know what you're pitching and you're patient and you have time to do it, and time in a big company is 6 to 9 months at the very least. If you're lucky, you're through it in 6. You're probably looking at 18 months to do anything. So make sure you've got that type of time to do it if you're going to waste it with a big company, because in many cases it'll end up, someone will change jobs, something will happen, and it'll just disappear, and that's the most frustrating thing in the world.
I totally agree. In the do's and don'ts, I would recommend don't, unless you are perfectly okay with scratching 6 months of work and getting nothing out of it. If you understand it for the long term, you want to build relationship for the long term, and you have the ability and the patience, then great. The other point that I would say is that there's a difference sometimes when doing opening or building the relationship bottom up and top down. Many times, entrepreneurs, actually those that are well funded, have VCs. Those VCs know, the CTO of the big corporate or someone on the board or someone like that, and they say, oh, no problem, I'll make an intro to the CEO or to the CTO and stuff. And he's sure to trickle it down, and you'll get full attention. And in reality, actually, that in most cases fail, because like mid-level managers don't like to get bossed around with all of this stuff. They do it, because they're asked, but most likely nothing material will come out of it. But if you're doing, if you're finding like this guys that actually work on the issue, the director level PM or engineering manager that actually feels the pain and is going to this conference and is looking for stuff and is tweeting about it, or is looking at GitHub, really in the trenches, and you get in touch with them, your chances of prolonged success are typically higher. And that's something also that I would recommend, that if you're doing it, do it with the people that actually feel the pain, and do it like not as a sort of a thing that they have to do because someone above them told them to, but rather thing that they want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to add to this. This is why I think there has to be in the corporate a mechanism which you are a part of it that bring those ideas in. And also, I know in my case, there will be like a full-time employee that his job or her job will be to make the contact with those mid-level managers that are feeling the pain and tailoring the startup solution into coming very ready and making it happen.
That's why I want to do open innovation with the business units inside Orange that really want to do open innovation, because some of them they don't want, and so it's no need to propose startups, so I want to work with the BUs that wants to do open innovation, and then I'm sure the others, they will come to it, but later on.
So I would just make one caution. If you create an organization that's separate and they're responsible for the innovation, and then you're expecting the operating companies or the business managers to collaborate, I think it's an unhealthy thing to develop too far. I think the separate group, I assume much like you do, would be primarily to help prepare the startup to face and be informed and understand how to make the business or operating manager look good, right? Because ultimately it's a human nature issue, right? If you can make them look good, they're more likely to invest the time and energy and resources to try this. And if that's your frame of reference, everybody works well. I don't think it should be, though, it shouldn't become a separate activity. I think at the end of the day, I'm also a line manager. I think that gives me very good perspective on how much flexibility I have within my committed roadmap, right, to experiment and to incorporate and to divert from what I've been, informed to do. And that gives me, I always build my portfolio so that I have a certain percentage that I'd like to play with, and that I change, freely. Some things I can't change, and you need to have that kind of sensitivity when you're having these negotiations if you want to be realistic about what you can propose. So I would be careful to go native. If you set up a separate office and that's all they do, it can also become unaccepted by the organization as a whole.
One thing that is, just to follow up on what you just said, one thing that always puts a smile on my face is that you come a small startup and he's really worried about the corporation kind of stealing his ideas, and whether they can sign an NDA with Yahoo or with eBay, etc., before they divulge the. And the thing that I always tell them is like, look, these guys, we have all of our obligations, committed roadmaps. We have PMs that have revenue goals and plans that are, quarterly or yearly or whatever. If you think that because of this meeting that you're having, someone is going to go to his manager and say, you know what, all of the revenues that I'm supposed to deliver, forget about it. I really want to pursue this thing that this guy has done or is doing. It's like, it's never going to happen. That's why there's a space for startups in the world, because corporates don't work like that. And it's a good thing for startups that corporates don't work like that. So don't worry about it. Feel free to divulge. No one's going to steal your ideas. No one has the time and energy to do that. If you are lucky, they'll think your idea will be interesting enough to maybe partner with you. But really, take it easy.
Just a quick point that Amit brought up that I wanted to raise again. You need to think about how you make the person in the big company look good. That's really, really important. And these big companies, if your small business can make whoever brought them in look really smart, you're going to get a lot more business. It's just a top tip.
It's true in life also, Okay, the next topic I want to talk about is crowdfunding and hear your thoughts around it and how it's, if you see it, side by side with working with startups or not, for a corporate, etc.
So in our case at Inc., we're actually involved in crowdfunding. And so obviously, I think that as a whole, it's a great other source of funds, but it's just funds, right? It doesn't come with anything else other than the dollars. So if you're investing, if I'm an entrepreneur and I have an idea and I'm investing all of my time and energy in complying with the crowdfunding in order to get dollars, I'm probably not investing my energies in the right place. So as a source of extra funds, especially at the very beginning, I think it's great. I think that very quickly you have to get beyond the money and figure out what is your business model, what is the thing that makes you different from everybody else, and spend most of your time on that.
The only thing I can say about crowdfunding, and then yes, it's a revolution, it's great, etc., is that it's important for places where you need market validation before you can raise a lot of money, right? Like before you can raise your real round, I would say. In this situation where if you're using platforms like Kickstarter, etc., stuff like that to get some initial funding, the other thing that you get is really that there is a market there that is interested in your product, then it might be helpful for you to raise an institutional round or whatever. I honestly, I think that it's sort of a bifurcate to way big corporates work and the kind of company that big corporates work with typically. But we know we're in the middle of this change, so it's not obvious where things will go.
I don't know how this slide entered here, but we are hiring, so talented people. So I want to thank you all for your things. If someone want to add something around any area, please.
I want to add that we are also hiring. And also that tomorrow we have the hackathon here in this space. We have a 36-hour hackathon with great prizes and lots of fun. And so if you haven't signed up and you're a hacker and you want to build something, go ahead and do that. That was my plug.
Just if you want to meet our team, we have Orange Partner Corner just outside.
So we're hiring, we're partnering, we're investing and promoting, especially the Israeli ecosystem. I think it's an amazing ecosystem, and I think there's a great opportunity for Israel to play an important role in the global multinational tech sector. I think Mark Anderson wrote a great article about software eating the world. I think software is a great place where people's imagination is the only thing that stops them from going anywhere, and the chutzpah here allows them to go absolutely crazy. I also think that the economies of the world are changing. It's not North America. That's not the only market in the world. And even the US-based companies are starting to recognize they actually need to understand different markets. One of the unique things about Israel is there are people from everywhere, and they have connections in all these markets. So there's an opportunity for the Fertile Crescent to be reinvented in the tech world as, you know, a crossroads for Asia and Europe and North America. And I think people should take advantage of it here.
Okay, and we can take a few questions. Just state if it's a general question or to someone in specific, please. If we have. So we're done. Thank you.